Hello, in this quick video, I'm gonna showcase the same scenario that we have seen integrating Business by Design to Shopify, but this time I'm gonna integrate with the same integration scenario Shopify with the ERP cloud from SAP S/4HANA Cloud. So we will realize that the integration scenarios are really the same. The only different part is the part that touch the back end itself. So this is kind of a scenario or integration scenario that is product agnostic, and that's the beauty and the power of the SAP Integration Suite that enable you to build integration scenarios that can be used several times to apply the same scenario with different ERP products. So let's start. That's my integration scenario between Shopify and S/4HANA Cloud. Okay, and it's really the same as the scenario that we have seen in the previous video, so no need to re-mention and explain everything in details. The only part I'm gonna let's say emphasize and explain in details is only the part at the end where we did the mapping, okay, from the Shopify sales order information to the build the sales order representation in S/4HANA, and then how we made the OData call in S/4HANA. Very similar, exactly the same way, let's say, to what we did in Business by Design. So let's start. I'm gonna let's say demonstrate quickly the whole scenario, creating a sales order in Shopify. Now we're gonna use another end customer that actually exists in S/4HANA, and I'm gonna look for whatever product that is available in my stock based on S/4HANA Cloud System, and just also give the customer note Shopify, that's item, so that price, and then gonna mark it as paid. The order will be drafted and then create the order. Now the order has been created in Shopify the same way as we did in BYD. I'll go back to the SAP Integration Suite and deploy this integration scenario between Shopify and S/4HANA Cloud once. Once it's deployed successfully, it will run also once, because as you can see here from the timer information or configuration information, you can see it's scheduled to run only once. So now that scenario has been activated for running once, we should expect to see the result in S/4HANA Cloud tenant. If we go to the monitoring, because that's an option that I haven't explained in the previous video, not to really overwhelm you much with all the technical, let's say, capabilities and features of the SAP Integration Suite, but let's do some, let's say, navigation in this monitoring area, because it's really important. If you go to the security material, here you can see, for example, the Business by Design relevant key stores, and that's the key store I used in order to make the call to BYD, or S/4HANA, that's the one that we're gonna use to represent our user credentials, the username and password, in order to make the call to S/4HANA. And that's what we're gonna see from the integration scenario shortly. If you go back to the overview section and then the category manage integration content, we can see here, let's just focus on S/4HANA. We can see this integration scenario that we have been looking at previously. And here I'm gonna set the trace option as a look configuration. And now back to the design part where I've got my integration package for S/4HANA and BYD. Which one? Yeah, this one. Okay. So that's my integration scenario between Shopify and S/4HANA. We can run it again, but let's create a new order in order to simulate, the right logic. by creating an order in Shopify and then replicating it into S4HANA. So again, this customer, just quickly, that's one item I have got available in the stock from the S4HANA Cloud system. Now we have got the order with ID 1060. Coming back to the SAP Integration Suite, I deployed once. Now we're gonna trace this integration scenario and see the results information behind the execution of every step. Go back to the monitoring. Here you can see this is my scenario. It's starting. Gonna refresh a little bit. Now you go back to the overview. The first category, monitor the message processing. So I'm gonna really monitor what is happening, and you can see even from the previous video, that was the last integration scenario run for BYD, and these are the two scenarios that we have run the past hour for the S4HANA Cloud. So the last one was just 3 seconds and 483 milliseconds. We click on it, and then you choose the trace option here, and you can see all the steps, execution information or related information, and the execution time, and so on and so forth. And you can see we started with this timer, right? And even all the configuration related to every step. The log content, you see, this is process step number 1, and so on and so forth. That's the start time. And if there is any message content. So this is the HTTP call related to the first Shopify call to the events API, if you still remember from the previous video. If not, please go back to the previous video and understand more in details the whole integration scenario, because that's really exactly the same way we did with BYD. And here, if you just select this step after the HTTP call, go for the message content section payload, you can see the events information. That's the payload, the result of the call to the events API, bringing the last order event ID, the last order ID, and the timestamp of the order creation. And that was created actually just a few minutes ago. Then I'm validating if it's a new event or not. If yes, we continue. You can see obviously we have continued here. And after the second HTTP call to Shopify, calling the Shopify admin API for orders, we get that order ID based on this ID. That's actually exactly the same ID we fetched from the event payload. You see here, which is technically called subject ID into this event call. Moving forward, we also validate if it's a new order or not. And of course, assigning the right values to our global variables. So for the next call, to always listen for the next events forwards. And here, after some conversions, mapping, we get the right representation of the sales order in S4HANA Cloud related format. You can see that's my payload. Very simple one. We didn't really complicate it much. That's the sales order number. Okay, the total net amount, which is really similar to that one. And this is my sales order ID represented in S4HANA Cloud. That is equivalent to the sales order 1060 represented into or in Shopify. So that's it simply. Also, you can always get header information. You can see 201. The sales order has been posted or created in the S4HANA Cloud backend system, and that's the HTTP. It's a status code. Okay, 201 means something has been created in the backend or out of the call. What else to show you? If there are any exchange properties, you remember, and from the past call there was like the parameter for events ID, order ID, timestamp. The naming is a little bit different than business by design, of course, because here we have let's say different scenario related parameters. And that's it for so far. So if I go to the design part again, to the S4HANA Cloud integration scenario with Shopify, we can see The only part that is different than the BYD stuff is building the response and actually do the mapping. This is a JavaScript. And you can see it's really similar to the one in BYD, except of course for the structure of the JSON body that will be the responsible one for creating the sales order in S4HANA. Of course, there are different, let's say, properties of that business object of sales order type in S4HANA than the one in BYD. And you can see all the informations here. And all is coming dynamic, adding to the list of items, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's it so far. If you have more questions, please get back to me or to the local solution experts in your region from SAP or the channel sales manager. Thank you so much, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. Take care and stay safe.